Ladies and gentlemen, gamers, welcome back to the channel. Today's video is a very exciting one because we're going to be diving into the Emerald Bear developer preview. This is something we've been waiting for a while. Guys, I think a lot of us hoped that this would be releasing today or at least next week, but it's going to be releasing on July 25th. So that's just about 10 days from now, 10, 11 days. This is rapidly approaching, and I think it's going to be the biggest change to Company of Heroes 3 since launch. I think this is a very exciting change. For any of you who are new to the channel, I wait to watch these previews live with you guys. That way I can give you my feedback and reaction. But yeah, I'm very excited to see this. I don't know what's in store. I have some ideas, but without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this.
So folks, what are we covering today? Like I said, it's going to be a high-level overview of all the changes coming in our Emerald Bear update. Again, coming out July 25th. We'll be covering everything from balance changes to pathfinding improvements, reworked off-map abilities, and so much more. What we won't be doing is covering every single line in the patch notes, as they're very, very long right now. I was looking at it the other day; it's like 30 pages or more or something. It's getting a little silly with all the new improvements that are coming to the game. So we'll be releasing the full patch notes just before Emerald Bear launches, so keep an eye out for that. Also, if you missed our maps overview from a couple of weeks ago with one Monolithic Bacon, be sure to go back and check that out so you can see the new maps that are going to be coming to all of our game modes. How you both feeling? Before we kind of get into all the big questions, I'm going to throw you a curveball. How are you sort of feeling overall about the update 1.20 or Emerald Bear in general? Because I know you've both been doing a ton of work. Miguel, let's start with you. How are you feeling about sort of all the work that's kind of gone into this up to this point?
I'm feeling very positive about the patch. I think pathfinding has been a very discussed topic ever since the game launched, and I think everyone knows that pathfinding is a core part of any game. So I think the changes just make the game just much more playable. And
100%.
also I'm feeling really good about all the work we've been doing with flight and off-map abilities. The standardization and behind-the-scenes work is really important as well. I just think that even with all the bug fixes that are coming in, the game will be just that much more solid.
Yeah, it's good to hear. What about you, Mark? How are you feeling about all the work that's gone into this so far?
Yeah, like Miguel, I share the same excitement for our improvements on both pathfinding, on both vehicles and team weapons, and the work that we have been doing on the off map. But I'm also excited about some of the metagame features we have been working on that we will be talking about today, as they are part of the experience, and they are also some of the reasons why I, for example, played previous Go games in a more competitive way. So I'm pretty happy.
Metagame features. What does that mean? I don't know what that means.
Awesome. That's good to hear.
So guys, if you don't know this, I know there's a lot of new players to the franchise. Miguel Devem, he's a legendary player in the community, tournament player. Has been a top ranking player for many years. Was hired on by Relic, and he's a fantastic asset to the team and to our community because he really carries a perspective both from a developer standpoint now and then also from our standpoint as players in the community. He really understands what the game needs, and I'm very interested to see the new pathing changes and, according to Marco, meta changes, but really happy about this guy. His little smiley face there. They were kind of separate in the last stream, if you guys remember. Now they're sitting on a couch together, touching shoulders. So I don't know. I feel like things are coming together, but let's continue.
So let's maybe just jump right into things. I've got my fancy presentation here. First topic of discussion for today is going to be pathfinding. Miguel, let's start with that because I know that's kind of your big area of work. And I know there are still more improvements that are going to be coming in later updates. And we didn't quite get absolutely everything into Emerald Bear that we wanted. But I'm curious if you can maybe talk about, like, from a high-level design perspective, what did you want to accomplish with these changes that are coming to pathfinding?
So the problem with pathfinding before was that maybe sometimes it was a little bit too smart for its own good. pathfinding needs to be
That's one way to
good
put it.
balance between being smart and being predictable. And often the player wouldn't really know where the vehicle would move through, or how things would react to their click. So a lot of work was kind of done in making it a lot more predictable. And also just there were like a lot of moments in the game that were, as we like to call them, monitor punching moments with pathfinding.
Yeah.
So we've ironed most of them out, but I want to also explain that pathfinding is still a work that's not finished. We've targeted for this patch basically the worst part of it, which was vehicles, but there will be more changes coming.
Okay, that's what I was
Yeah,
wondering,
that's
because
good to hear.
infantry needs some work too.
So let's maybe get into some of the more granular changes that are coming. I've got some before and after examples that I'll throw on screen here. We've been sharing some of these sneak peeks on social, so some of them might be familiar, some of them might be new. So I'll throw these up, and Miguel, maybe you can kind of talk us through some of the things that are going to be coming here, if I can find them. There we go. So what are some of the more, I guess, smaller or more minute, changes that we've made here for pathfinding?
Yeah. So this
Oh,
one
wow.
is a pretty handy one. Basically, we've now have the vehicles stop before they meet an impasse.
That's
which
so
basically
nice.
means that they'll be ready for the next movement order because
Right.
they are not close to the building. Here it's actually a really important one, which is our vehicles now prefer to use the front facing before they start their movement.
So
Which basically
big.
means that there's less times where the vehicle will reverse into battle. And of course, this one we showed before. This is about how vehicles used to want to clump up in the same place,
Oh yeah, this is
and now they should basically move more as a formation instead.
Okay, yeah, that's good. It's good to see.
Yes.
So it's a little bit more like where they start and where they finish. will
Yes,
look a little bit
exactly.
similar,
Like
right?
there wasn't any changes to their movement to the location. It's more like where they finish in the location.
so much better, man. Because you could micro out of these
Was this tied
formations
to
now
where
instead
the
of
user clicked, like if it was close to cover.
Yes, yes. There was a problem that we found there
Thank
specifically
God.
with unit movement. This is actually something also important, which is infantry often would get
Oh, they're
stuck
getting-
running up against moving vehicles or team
Yeah.
weapons.
What was this on retreat only, or was this just in general?
In general,
Right.
any infantry that was moving against vehicles or team weapons would basically keep going up against it, and now they should nicely avoid the team weapon or vehicle.
Okay, that's good. I think that's consistent. It should be.
Oh, right, phase
Changed.
through. I think some
Yes.
people in the chat were asking about this.
Yeah. So we've reintroduced a fair bit of phasing. Basically, phasing allows the less frustrating moments to the player. I think it's something that is really hard to describe without playing the game, but a little bit of phasing should be all right to
100%.
eliminate the frustrating points. Because the problem with vehicles in general is that they are high value units. So anytime that a vehicle gets stuck, it's a chance for losing basically the game.
Like, guys, if you think about that last segment there where the tanks, they did phase through each other crossing the bridge, but they did not stop. And in the current patch, if you try to get across that bridge, it's going to take quite a while, and there's going to be a lot of finicky maneuvering before they even get across the bridge. They're going to be turning and twisting, and you guys know the experience. This is like quick. It's smooth. Yeah, they're phasing through each other a little bit, but they're getting across the bridge in a timely manner according to your commands. It's just going to play so much better.
Game on the spot almost.
Yeah.
This one is a very subtle one. I think it will be hard to really properly communicate what's happening here, but basically there is now a wait between when the vehicle wants to go around something or when the vehicle wants to go up to something. And this is very useful for when you're chasing enemy vehicles.
Right.
And you want to keep your gun straight and not path around and keep your target basically in sight.
Super good.
So can you explain road preference? Because I was a little bit
Yes.
unclear when you first brought this to me in a meeting. I was like, I don't understand what you're talking
So
about.
road preference is one of those that maybe the pathfinding was too smart for its own good.
Come on, John.
We basically try to use roads to get to somewhere faster, whereas of now we turn that off, and the roads will still give the movement bonus, but now the player will have to do the click themselves. And this is for me one of the huge ones because it has a lot of implications to gameplay. The way that vehicles do their curves and turns should be a lot smoother. And the more heavily impact on gameplay that this has is that vehicles that are very mobile or when you're flanking an enemy vehicle should now be a lot more easier, which I think what we'll end up seeing is that vehicles with a lot of mobility, such as the Chaffee, will be a lot stronger
Uh-oh.
in the upcoming patch.
Chaffee, guys.
Right, just because they have more.
Yes.
Yeah.
Chaffee spam.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a couple of questions here from the chat that maybe I'll throw at you, Miguel. Is it only allied vehicles for the blocking, or can you still block enemy infantry?
Okay, before we get to that question about blocking enemy infantry, so as we saw in the first segment of this live stream, let's say this Chaffee was to go up to this building right here. In the current patch, the Chaffee, if you were to click like right here on the ground in front of this building, the Chaffee would go up to it. It would literally go through it partially. And then if you wanted to click out of this area, like go around or do something else, move somewhere else, it would take a long time. Like the vehicle would have to stop, turn its chassis, and then move out, right? It'd be very clunky, very difficult. Now, the tank is going to go up to the edge of the building, but not go through the building. So if you wanted to do a quick pivot and turn, you'll be able to now very, very smoothly. So I don't know if that was clear. I should have mentioned that before, but these interactions around buildings and through cities and so forth, which are very common in the current map pool, are going to be so much better. But yeah, let's continue about John's question regarding infantry blocking.
Like for that preference for them to go around units.
So it should be with the enemies. So with the allies, there is still a preference. There's an avoidance, as we call it, to avoid allied vehicles. So they won't phase through unless they absolutely need to. But they should still want to go around. But with enemy vehicles in specific, they do that behavior of
See, look at that. That's
basically
exactly
going
what I'm...
as further as they can before coming to a stop near the enemy vehicle.
Okay.
Which is a good opportunity to also say that stopped enemy vehicles also block pathfinding.
Okay.
So it's not like you can phase through every instance.
Yeah, I had a couple questions about the road preference as well.
Yeah, so much smoother. Look at that.
Will that ever switch back and forth, or is we're kind of
That's awesome.
turning it off right now so that they're taking more of a direct route? Will we play?
How
with
much
that
quicker that
change
is?
in
It's
the
like-
future?
It's hard to say what and will not change with pathfinding. It's possible that it will change. For now, we went with the safer approach of turning it off because it's something that added a lot of unpredictability to how
Yeah,
the
there
vehicles
you
will
go.
respond.
Yeah.
But I can see a scenario maybe in the future where we revisit it and add some of it for longer routes.
One of our modders was also asking if the road preference is linked to a texture in essence. I don't know if that's a question for you or is it a
I
separate
don't believe
entity?
it is.
Okay.
We still retain the buffs on like when vehicles are on roads. They're still going to be moving faster. It's just that now it needs a player intention, so specific orders to use roads rather than pathfinding automatically trying to use it. As we noticed that, and players notice it as well, that sometimes that
So clunky.
the implication of that was that vehicles were taking unexpected paths, the paths that were considered more optimal, and that caused the vehicles to like take paths that were more dangerous for them.
I'll also mention that pathfinding, especially for the Company of Heroes franchise, is a very tricky topic. Mostly because in the Company of Heroes game, it does matter where the vehicle is facing. It does matter if the vehicle's on the move or not. So it's always hard to balance what the pathfinding should be doing because there might be situations where a player expects something to happen, but because in another situation it was bad enough that something else was happening, it affects that other situation.
Yeah.
So sometimes you might expect that it's better for a vehicle to pivot on the spot, but maybe in some other instance you would have wanted the vehicle to keep moving to get out of range or something. So it's always tricky to balance, specifically in this franchise, what the vehicles should be doing. But I think we've hit a good middle ground between predictability and the pathfinding being smart enough.
This is going to change the meta, guys, in a pretty
Marco,
dramatic
when
way,
we're
I
looking
think.
at these changes, I know we're kind of looking at some very specific examples, but I remember you were telling me that we kind of have to kind of look at them as a whole.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, of course. So I'm sure that everyone watching this video will formulate their own opinion about how vehicles are moving in each of these specific videos. But
How did
my
that miss
suggestion is
point
really
blank
for
range?
you guys to try them in the game once the patch rolls out, because all these changes, they really add up together, and the ultimate goal is that you should perceive pathfinding as a whole improved compared to the to 116. So yeah, like take these specific videos as like with a little grain of salt, because they are showcasing specific scenarios, but the overall experience should feel generally much better.
That's so
And
much
Miguel,
better.
I also know phasing is a bit of a spicy decision.
Oh, yeah.
As it kind of,
Yeah.
there's that fine line between realism and gameplay. So I'm kind of curious if you could maybe expand on that a bit.
Yeah, so we basically use still an avoidance system in vehicles, which basically means that vehicles will still try to avoid allied and enemy vehicles when possible. But what phasing should be really hitting are the moments where your vehicle is stuck in, for example, traffic jams in a bridge or something similar, which would cause basically big frustration moments. But it still has a downside to it, that is the vehicle does lose a lot of its speed while phasing. So it's not like it can phase at full speed.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
But obviously, it's always going to be a contentious topic, but it's one of those things where I also feel like players should get their hands on it before basically coming to a conclusion on it. Because it's really easy to right now say that, for example, phasing will bring bad things, but I feel like it's a net positive on the overall feel of the game and overall frustrating moments of the player when playing the game.
What's up with these
Okay,
point
I'm gonna
blank
hold you to
misses? I
that.
don't understand.
I'm curious if
What is
there are
going
any
on?
other sort of challenges to improving
that on purpose?
pathfinding, and sort of some of the things that you had to work on while you were doing this, because I know you were saying earlier it's a little bit tricky, especially in this franchise.
Yes, it's very, very difficult actually, because even if we, for example, phasing, let's take phasing for this scenario, phasing on itself, if it isn't there, there's lots of scenarios where tanks will permanently be stuck on each other, for example, because they'll be trying to avoiding each other and they are on the move at the same time, and it's really difficult sometimes to really get something that, from a player perspective, is smooth. But there's obviously a lot of other components to pathfinding. So, for example, when to take a pivot or when to do a turn.
Right.
Because again, it does matter a lot in our game. How the vehicle finishes their movement. If they finish their movement facing 45 degrees to the left or facing exactly to the front of where the player clicked, it does matter a lot.
Okay.
And we do need to make at some points the decision of what behavior the vehicle will have when doing those, and that might in some situations, it's always a balance between what will be the situations that are the worst and that we can fix, and maybe to make something less optimal in some other very niche scenario.
Yeah.
But that's something that we need to take.
Okay.
Another good example of that is, for example, formation movement. If you're selecting two vehicles and you click and they are, let's say, 20 meters away from each other and you click in the center of them, maybe one vehicle thinks that it's better to reverse into it and the other thinks it's better to move forward into it. But if there's like an enemy in between, then maybe you wouldn't want the vehicle to reverse into the point that you clicked. So it's it's very difficult to get that predictability and what the player expects out of the pathfinding, especially in our game. When in other RTS games, it doesn't really matter if the unit just starts moving backwards instantly, even from a realism standpoint. But yeah, hopefully this patch brings a lot of good things for pathfinding. It's still an iterative approach, so we'll still be taking feedback on pathfinding. So it's not that anything is final.
Right.
Yeah.
And like we were saying earlier, I know there's still more work being done
Yes,
here that's going to come
exactly.
in later.
Yeah, we have a lot of like great engineers helping
Yeah.
us.
Yes.
It's really like a team effort that we couldn't do without the help of all these people.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of related to the pathfinding stuff. Let me get my fancy presentation back up here. We want to talk about some of the updates that we're doing to vehicles. Miguel, I know we've done a full pass on vehicle speeds, rotation, acceleration, deceleration. Could you maybe elaborate on that a little bit? Like what are we kind of hoping to accomplish with that work there?
Yeah, so first and foremost, it's a little bit of creating a baseline for our vehicles. We want to have better distinctions between what a light vehicle is in terms of acceleration and movement speed versus, let's say, a tank like a Sherman, right? So a lot of it was about creating clear distinctions between vehicle classes. And there's also a component that, because of the pathfinding changes, and because of weapon traverse changes that we'll get to after, it has a lot of implications on how the game plays. So
Right.
it just made sense to ally acceleration, pivot speeds, and everything else to pathfinding changes.
And I think Marco, one of the things that we wanted to do here was sort of have a clear distinction between vehicle classes. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, we wanted to have a clear distinction between light, medium, and heavy vehicles. So there shouldn't be cases of like medium vehicles being faster than light ones. And these will really be emphasized by the improvements to the vehicle pathfinding.
I love that.
For example, as Miguel was suggesting earlier, we are bringing back weapon traverse, and
Spoilers.
so spoilers. So those case-made vehicles will now have a dedicated like kind of like movement set, so they will be like slower, but their gun can traverse. So I think it's important to notice, and this is especially to those that have played Co-1, that vehicles moving in front-facing moving forward or in reverse, they have different speed values. While instead in Co3, our initial approach is to keep them the same, which makes it in a way harder for pathfinding to judge if it's better to move using front-facing or moving in reverse.
Okay.
And that's why we also brought back we made front-facing more relevant.
Okay. No, it's good to know. So let's maybe talk next about weapon traverse. Marco, what's changed there? Can you kind of maybe give us a high-level overview of what's going on with weapon traverse?
So we have finally enabled weapon traverse. It was actually something that was already available in our attribute editor. So it was possible to turn it on and off. The problem is that, and why we didn't turn it on before, is that there were various visual and behavior bugs that were preventing us to really making those vehicles act as we wanted. So we kept it disabled until we could finally fix those and then enable them. And we also wanted to couple those changes with the pathfinding improvements, as when you enable traversing, and usually it's between 10 and 15 degrees left and right. We do want to make sure that those vehicles don't feel too powerful and also not too weak, because one reality that players will find out is that using vehicles is going to be a much smoother experience.
Absolutely, yeah.
So sorry, not to interrupt, but Miguel, I'm kind of curious how these changes to weapon traverse kind of, or rather, how did pathfinding affect some of these changes that are coming to weapon traverse?
Yeah. It will always affect weapon traverse in the sense that we have units such as the Stug and the Marder, which are case-made vehicles. And one of the counterplays of the vehicle as a design choice is that you could flank them. But because the pathfinding wasn't basically doing the smooth curves, players were finding it really difficult to flank them. So basically, if we didn't have the pathfinding changes to make vehicles a lot smoother in their curves and how they will perform now flanks, there could be a problem with these vehicles being too strong because you couldn't flank them due to the poor pathfinding.
Yeah.
But now with all the pathfinding changes, all the vehicle mobility changes, it also made a lot of sense to look at weapon traverse.
Nice. Yeah, I
Okay,
think
good
it's
to
a good
know.
change.
Next topic for us here, team weapons. I know we're doing some things here to team weapons. Miguel, I think I'll throw this one to you again. What are some of the changes that are coming? Because I know there have been some frustration points with how team weapons work in the past, and I know
They
we
don't
wanted to
work.
alleviate a lot of that. So run me through what's the high level notes of how are we changing these?
So at a high level, the problem with team weapons is mostly, again, the interaction that the player has with them, how easy they and how responsive they are to interact with. So most of the changes were not particularly balanced changes per se, but they will impact balance just because if something is more responsive,
Yeah.
obviously it will become stronger. Just by
Absolutely.
the nature of it. So some of the changes that we were targeting for team weapons was, for example, the teardown time. So now AT guns and team weapons in general should be able to start a teardown a lot more quicker.
Right.
Some other changes were sometimes team weapons were, for instance, packing up when the squad that they are targeting still even had entities inside the arc of fire, which from a player perspective made it seem like the behavior just wasn't quite right. Like it could still shoot at entities.
Right. So why are you packing up and leaving when you
Yes,
still have a
exactly.
target? Yeah.
Yes. There were also some
I think off the top of my head, because I'm cheating. I've got the notes in front of me.
yeah,
You
sorry.
don't.
I was just
But
remembering like the
like prioritization, turn in place.
yes. So the turn in place is also a big one.
Yeah.
The turn in place basically means that you have a grace range before, whereas before, for example, you would tell a team weapon to set up to the left or to the right, and the team weapon would do basically a pivot and a movement to the location and then do the setup.
Yeah.
That introduced a lot of delay really to the team weapons.
Big time.
So what we've done is there is a grace range around the team weapon or the HMG that in which the team weapon will not do any movement orders and they'll just do the rephase.
Right. Okay.
Which from a gameplay perspective, this might seem like a really small point for team weapons, but from a player perspective and even in game, I think it will be really noticeable that it doesn't have the extra delays of pivots and movement orders.
Right. And I think they should be a little bit smarter when they're in their idle state as well, like in terms of like
Yes.
tracking and setting up when an enemy comes into range.
Yes, I'm exactly not sure how noticeable this was before to players, but we've decided to make that experience a lot better. So what could happen before this patch is that team weapons could be in the state of always tracking their enemy if they were not given a manual order to set up.
Right.
So what we've done is we've made that part a lot better, where now the team weapons should be a lot more smart or fast on setting up the team weapon when they're not actually set up and not being given manual orders by the players.
Right.
Um,
That was very common where you would have a weapon or a team weapon, let's say a motor sitting there and it's idle and there's enemies moving within range and they're not firing. Or other scenarios where you have a unit, a motor that should be firing at the target you designated. But after that target leaves into the fog of war, the motor would just stand up, pick up, and just start running into the fog of war into enemy territory. And it was like the most bizarre. It was like still trying to find that unit that's gone instead of stopping that sequence, looking for a new enemy, or just like sitting idle altogether, right? So there's a lot of little changes that I think are going to make a huge difference in terms of ease of use for these team weapons.
but that one is also, I suppose, a big one because it does also impact, for example, if you use attack move, it does impact how responsive the weapon is once it encounters an enemy.
Gotcha. Marco, any thoughts on team weapons?
I think overall players will notice how much smoother they are. I think from my perspective, this is just one of the other like quality of life improvements that had to be done to bring the steam weapons into like the like now they really feel like you can use them. They feel responsive. We are removing pain points from the players.
Right. Okay. Next up, what do we got here? Marco. Yes. Before we get to unit selection, I think I switched my questions around here, so we'll get to unit selection in a minute. But what about the post-match results? I know some of the stats there needed a bit of a tweak. It was causing a bit of frustration when you finish a match and you're like, "What's going on with this screen?"
Yeah,
Can you talk about
100%.
some of the changes that are coming to that post-match results screen?
Absolutely. Post-match results simply showed too many information, some of which were not really interesting to the player.
Yeah.
And we
Or interesting to
we have
look at.
decided to take a look at that, and we made some refinements to really only surface what's important to the player. So when it comes down to units killed and units lost, instead of counting squads, now we are counting entities. So numbers are going to be accurate from now on. And
cool.
for damage dealt, we were actually counting every single damage you do to every asset of the game in the game, like including neutral assets. Now we have changed it so that only damage you do to the enemy is counted in those numbers.
Okay.
Okay, so that explains why artillery, like if you play with, I noticed if I was playing with bishops, like my damage would be super high. It didn't make sense to me because it's like, man, I know I was hitting vehicles, but I wasn't doing that much damage. So that makes perfect sense where you're hitting assets in general and it's accounting for that damage. Thank God they're changing that. I don't think that's an accurate depiction. I like that they're changing the infantry stats. I hope that the this is not a big deal, but in terms of UI and presentation, I hope they have a better theme for the post match results. Like Code 1 and Code 2, the theme is very nice. It feels like you're looking at an after action report in a military barracks, right? You're looking at this report of the whole match. I love that theme and concept. So I hope they implement that as well.
As for the damage taken instead, we are including the damage you take from the enemy and also the damage you take from your own abilities or your friends. Say you throw an artillery ability and you take damage from it. We've also tried to improve how we calculate resource efficiency, and we have added some tooltips so that players can over the mouse over some of these properties, and they can try to understand. They can understand a bit better how we calculate them. Overall, the idea is that post-match stats should tell you much more interesting and actually accurate information.
Yeah.
On top of that, we have added something else that I'm sure we will talk more
get to
about
that. Yeah,
later on.
Okay, Miguel, your turn. Unit selection. I know we did make some changes there. Can you maybe quickly cover how that's changed?
Yeah. Unit selection is also one of those things that the player is interacting with the game all the time.
Yeah.
And they might not notice as much if there's like any frustration point there. But as with the theme of with pathfinding here, the solution we're looking for is how can we make the game a lot less frustrating to interact with. Unit selection is a big part of that. What we've done here is adjust how the basically dynamic selection boxes of units interact. Now they should be a lot more forgiving in selection.
Okay.
So they are bigger. And what basically this implies is that players should feel less the need to use the selection bandboxing to select units. And they should now be feeling more comfortable in actually just clicking on the unit and on the entities to select a unit.
Yeah.
And as a side effect of this as well is that it should be a lot easier to right-click enemies as well, which I think from more of a practical standpoint, players will feel this a lot, especially when they're using HMGs and targeting enemy units, whereas before they could maybe misclick and start the teardown process on a team weapon.
Right.
So
That was very frustrating.
yes,
Used to happen to me all the
change there
time.
should be pretty significant.
It's very annoying.
There's also changes to how we select and select retreating units. So now retreating units shouldn't be selectable anymore. And what means from a practical standpoint, again,
Oh,
is
thank
that
God.
if you're selecting every unit on the screen, or if you before had a multi-selection group and one of the units had retreated,
Yeah.
if it was still selected, it would make that the other squads weren't responding to any commands,
Yes.
which was really bad.
Yeah.
And we've now made that they basically are unselectable, which means that you won't have instances where you have a retreated unit selected by chance and you cannot give any orders to the rest of your infantry.
Yep.
Gotcha.
There's
Perfect.
also a last one that's more minor, but still pretty significant, which is that now the construction menus or any menus that you have open on the units will reset on reclick. Basically, what this means as well, again, from a practical standpoint, is when you have an engineer unit, for example, and sometimes you would be trying to retreat the unit, but you would have the construction menu open.
Yeah. And it's like, no, I don't want to build
Yeah.
sandbags.
So now it should be a lot easier to just retreat units or have access to other commands when you forgot that you had the construction menu open before.
Yeah. Okay. Next thing I think is also probably one of the major changes coming in Emerald Bear, and that is off-map abilities. We've done a ton of work here. Marco, I know this is kind of your baby.
Why is Marco so excited about
So
this?
again, high level from a design perspective, what are we hoping to do with a lot of the work that's gone into off-map abilities here?
Okay, so at the highest level, we wanted to improve on two of our core pillars, immersion and authenticity. So how did we, and when we took a step back and we looked at how the game was performing when it came down to off-map abilities, we noticed a lot of pain points related to readability of the abilities, consistency, like when the player selects an ability and clicks on an area, does the ability actually performs well where the player has clicked? And the answer many times was actually no.
Oh,
so
interesting.
we wanted to go back to that and actually try to really improve it, while also adding a lot more flavor across different abilities. That allowed us to also create a better infrastructure behind, or like a baseline on which we can build new abilities much quicker, and also allow other players to build new abilities quicker.
Gotcha.
This is huge, guys. And once again, this fits within the whole standardization theme that Relic is kind of designing the game around. So they've standardized the team weapons, like they said, like tear down and set up. They've standardized the flight system for airplanes in the last patch. They've standardized now. They're kind of standardizing these off-map abilities, as you've heard, which is huge. This is going to be really important for a couple of reasons we'll kind of get into. And I'm thinking about StarCraft as a reference. One thing they do really well is this change that they're now making for this game. And yeah, they're just standardizing a lot of different things, which are going to be really helpful for the game moving forward, because you're going to have even like this is the best example and the best change. They said they're changing the times between light vehicles, medium, and heavy vehicles in terms of their speed. So they're standardizing that across every vehicle archetype. So you have a good idea as a player, okay, that's a light vehicle, it's going to move around this speed. That's a medium vehicle, it's going to move around this speed. That's a heavy vehicle, it's going to move at this speed exactly. So you'll be able to know what you're dealing with instead of these wide varying amounts of speed for each unit. It just becomes very convoluted in terms of gameplay and consistency. So yeah, I'm really curious to see what these off-the-map abilities have in terms of changes.
So let's maybe again look at some of these before and after shots.
Yes,
and we
and we
can kind of get into some of the details about what's going on here. Okay, so yeah, let's just talk about some of these changes, Marco. Again, you know, we have a lot of very specific instances here, but what's some of the work that you've been doing here for a lot of these off maps?
I think we're actually still showing the.
Oh, sorry, that's B-roll. My bad. I mean, it's amazing, epic gameplay that of me playing against the AI. Where's my there? All right, let's look at off maps. so what do we do? The airburst barrage.
Airburst barrage. So for the airburst, we were looking at especially the consistency. So where the player clicked before, and the barrage itself was taking too long to actually hit the ground, and it was actually pretty unreliable. especially in the first shots. So what we tried to tackle here was making it feel more responsive in terms of how quickly it hits the ground, and also in terms of like consistency. So when you use the ability where the player clicks matters.
So
We
important.
still wanted to keep some sort of like an RNG factor. Like we wanted to keep a random element into the abilities, and when we go through each different like archetype of the abilities, we will understand how we achieved this result. But right now, you will notice a lot of nuances like, oh, the ability hits more consistently the center where the player clicked.
Okay, so this is so huge. I really love this change. Okay, so as we saw in the previous segment, the off-map barrage that was, let's say it was put here, it was hitting up here, it was hitting over here, it was hitting on this side, it was going all over the place. And like they said, RNG is important. You want RNG, but you want controlled RNG that's somewhat predictable, because that creates the metagame, that creates the counterplay and proactive play that allows players to sort of tactically maneuver around each other if you could consistently predict what is going to happen. But if you place the barrage here and it's hitting over here in this corner, it becomes a very, very unuseful ability in the sense of like, what can you really accomplish? There's going to be no fear by your opponent. He's not going to move his MG. Like, he could continue to suppress your units, right? So I love the idea of consistency. I love the idea of the flares coming down, and you as the player on the other side reacting to this, you know, okay, it's probably going to hit in this vicinity, this controlled space. I need to get out quick. And it once again allows for that proactive and reactive play between both sides. I think it's fantastic. So let's continue.
You also have, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, a different flare for this type of abilities. And overall, it hits quicker, while still providing you some time to react to that.
I think that's
Naval
important
bombardment
too.
is
I like
probably
that.
one of the biggest ones that players will notice, especially in the before and after.
Yeah, this clip
For
is
the
nuts.
before,
This is
it took
nuts.
a very long time to hit the field. It was very unreliable in terms of like the consistency at which it would hit targets, but it was also very strong. We tried to add a lot of flavor into this ability. It's probably one of the strongest late game abilities. Players will notice that there are a lot more projectiles. They have been tuned down to be less effective, but they're now firing in a battery of 4.
What?
And as you can see, they are
What was
extremely
that?
effective.
Oh boy.
What?
They are still going to take
It's still
some
going?
time to hit the ground, so players will have a chance to react.
Bro, what am I watching
But this
right
is
now?
probably one of the strongest abilities we are.
Why is it so
working on.
fast?
Right. Miguel,
What
any
was
comments
that,
on these
bro?
so far?
That's the
Bro.
new Miguel art.
Well, I've been hit with one of those before. It's not pleasant.
Yeah.
And Marco needs to calm down.
I think
he
we
needs.
showed
He
off
needs.
the Obiche
Yes.
yesterday.
I think he's okay. So he's obviously in charge of this tuning, of balancing of these things. 100%, he's a British main who plays this battle group exclusively. And I'm just gonna say this right now. It looks awesome. That bombardment looks really cool. I mean, it's gonna make for great spectating experiences, and even using it's gonna be super fun. In terms of balance, I have a real hard time believing that is balanced. Now, I don't know. But that is gonna. I mean, it looks so cool. It looks super sick. But man, that's gonna literally delete so many units. I mean, it's so fast. You're gonna have to get out of dodge immediately. I mean, if you see that coming down and you know your opponent's playing that battle group, you just gotta retreat. You gotta move quick, because if you're still sitting there, you're toast. The nice thing about it is you have, I don't know what it was, 7-8 seconds before it hits, maybe more. But once it does hit, it's hitting super fast. So you got to get out, man. Geez, that was insane.
So for this one, I wanted to call out a couple of things that actually players could even see before.
Is this
But
still the same
in the before,
bombardment?
you will notice that this ability takes a very long time to hit the field. So enemies that just had too much time
No,
to
this
react.
is different, I think.
They could also suppress infantry and team weapons, and we have changed that so that every unit that doesn't have a retreat capability that cannot be suppressed will not. So no more suppression on AT guns, for example. We've also, as you can see,
The deformation and impact into the ground is so good. Like the physics and the fact that this is now cover, I love it.
here it's very like shots are very scattered and they don't really hit where they should. And now in the new version, they are going to be more accurate.
Yeah.
And this is actually a very nice win we're getting in terms of readability. We're bringing back the XP kickers for kills that are coming from the off-map
Good,
abilities.
thank you.
This is something that even Core 2 was missing, and we're adding it back straight from Core 1.
Nice.
I love it.
So hopefully, as most of these abilities do not provide any vision, players will still be able to understand if those abilities have been effective at all, and if they got them any kill.
I think a nice thing here that we didn't mention is I'll let these loop again. And maybe
Okay, so if one thing I noticed here, he placed the off map here for this specific barrage, and although it hit initially here, and up here, so it almost like this cross, and it did not deviate from those 4 options. Now I don't know how accurate that really is, but I'm really curious to know if there's an RNG between a few spots consistently. It's something we're gonna have to figure out, maybe play test or over time learn, because it's gonna really help us counterplay this artillery. And even set it off. No, I don't know if that's true or not, but I found that interesting because it was hitting in the similar vicinities every time.
The map looks much better.
Yeah, so in that last clip with the Obice, it was the old Benghazi when it was still just a workshop map, and it was the new Benghazi that is actually coming to auto match.
So this artillery is like really mediocre for the price.
Okay, so what's going on here?
Okay, what's going on here? Recon Artillery, only ability in the game that you can basically use everywhere on the map. It also combines the 2 words of flight and artillery. In the before, you will notice how the plane loiters around the area. You don't know exactly how big the area is. Artillery comes very scattered and doesn't really seem to be like it doesn't really target the entities that are there. So it can become very painful when you use it. You feel like you've wasted your resources, and it takes a long time before they are actually like hitting the enemy and provide you some value. So we've really tried to make this much better. So the airplane now will come in a bigger area. It will move much faster. Players will see the area of effect. They will notice flares where the target is going to be hit, and the artillery is going to be much more accurate.
Nice.
This means that if your allies and you're hit by these Nebelwerfer or other indirect fire units, you can use this ability to really help you.
Super good, man. It's so much better.
And that's the catch.
Brits are back, baby. I feel like the Brits are going to be pretty good with all this adjustments to off map, because there's a lot of off map for the Brits and artillery in general.
This is still an ability that requires vision, and so it requires the airplane to be alive. If you're able to kill the airplane, then the ability will stop.
So that almost incentivizes you to have AA around your artillery pieces. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Cool.
That's good to know.
Registered artillery is also a pretty big noticeable. Before we had to do some compromises with how the ability was looking and behaving to bring this sort of like,
this is my
area, I want to defend it. In the new improved version, players will notice that the ability feels and behaves much more realistic. It acts in a very unique way, so that like the projectiles will come more scattered at the start, and as the time passes, they will become more consistent in number and accuracy.
Oh,
and
cool.
so you will notice that it's now like more effective.
Yeah.
This gives an element of counterplay to players. So they like if you are the player that receives this, as long as you are hit by the first projectiles, you will be able to retreat in time. But if you stay there, your squads will die.
Right.
You don't have much time either. I mean, he's saying the initial ones are not that high impact, but you have to retreat immediately upon being hit. You got to get out of there quick, because if you stay in there like we just saw, you're going to get deleted. So yeah, I do like this element of counterplay to the off map.
Right. So it gives you just enough time to maybe micro away, but if you're not paying attention, you're going to get punished.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll let these play again as we talk about some of the other things that's going on here. I think you might have mentioned it earlier, but Miguel, modders are now going to be able to use some of the ability templates for off maps. Is that correct?
That is correct. We somewhat did the same work as we did with the flight abilities.
Okay.
So now modders should be able to basically use the same attributes that we use to create these, and if they want, they can create their own. And it should allow them for a good amount of freedom in the way that they want to do any new off-map abilities or even new plane abilities as well.
Okay. So there's a lot going on in these clips. Some of the first things I'm noticing, Marco, we've obviously updated some of the projectile sounds. We've changed flares. We've added ground deformation. I don't know if it was in the clips, but I know we've also changed like the sector effects.
Yes.
What do you think are going to be some of the more comprehensive changes that players are going to notice first here? Maybe you could touch on some of those things that I called out.
So
Yes.
awesome. I love the deformation.
So starting from the idea that we have decided to templatize these abilities into various like archetypes, we have decided to bring back different flare types that are applied to both off-map abilities and their planes, and they will let you understand what type of ability is going to hit you in terms of threat level. So how dangerous that ability is going to be for your units, and so like due to that, we tuned aspects like the delay.
Okay, let's count this. Let's try and look at the timer, and I want to know how long it takes before the first barrage hits for this overpowered naval bombardment.
And the projectiles.
What is it?
To represent that threat level. So
Okay,
we're
40,
going to have
3,
5
okay,
different possibilities here. So first one, abilities that are mainly for support purposes, like small.
Okay, 8 seconds roughly. You have 8 seconds to get out, more like 7, or else you're going to get deleted as you see on screen. This thing is insane.
Local beacon.
My God.
You won't have any flare being used. Airdrop abilities will have the 3 green flares as they are right now, or like supplies, simple supplies. Abilities that are low threat, and when I say low threat, I mean things that can be troublesome for team weapons, but that infantry should be able to dodge, are marked with 3 yellow flares. For abilities that can instead be a threat to infantry and can also potentially damage vehicles, we are using orange flares. And for like very like late game high threat abilities, we are using the red flares. When it comes down, so this should help a lot in terms of readability. So even though you don't know what ability the player is going to use, understanding the threat should help players reacting to that, whether moving troops away if it's a low threat ability, or straight up retreating if it's something that it's like a high threat kind of ability.
So keep that in mind, guys. Different colors for different flare abilities.
Yes.
Did you do anything there?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
So sector abilities and area abilities have received a full pass, and for sector ones, we are actually bringing back the territory highlight on minimap and tactical map. So when you use those abilities, you will notice that if you use those abilities, territories affected will become yellow, and for enemy ones, they will become orange. And when it comes down to how those abilities behave, we have tuned them down a little bit in their behavior. For example, the perimeter artillery for the Indian artillery battle group is now less suppressive. Shots fire like for a longer time, and now we have 3 different artilleries, so like 3 entities that can target 3 different enemies separately, that will acquire targets that they can see in friendly territory, and they will shoot them deal damage, and also
which should avoid some of the cases where before a single unit would be targeted by 5 different flares. And be deleted off the map.
Yeah, exactly.
I am seeing a lot of questions about very specific off maps, but Marco, from what I'm understanding, you basically touched all of the abilities. Like everything has gotten a pass, right?
Yes. So we're going to have as I was talking about before, we're going to have some templates of abilities. We have the standard off-map abilities that are usually those that we have spent a lot of time tuning. And we built, like generally we built two main behaviors. One is that when you use an ability, the first projectiles will be more accurate, because we wanted to enforce the idea that where the player clicked, he should always get some sort of result. So first projectiles will be more accurate, the others will scatter a bit more. And then the other behavior that we can see again for registered artillery or for the zeroing artillery is that projectiles will come more scattered at the start, and then they will increase in number and shrink down to the point where player clicked.
Yeah.
And they will generally be deadlier later on, but initially they will be a little bit easier to deal with. Then we have repurposed the area cover abilities. Now you will see an area highlight exactly like you can with loiters, and you will know where the ability is going to hit. You will see flares whenever.
And these are orange flares because it's a less powerful ability, right? So it's not high threat. So yeah, that's really cool. I like that a lot.
An artillery has acquired the target, so you will know exactly which of your squad is going to be targeted. And we have generally set those ability up with like different artilleries that can target different unit types, so team weapons, infantry, and vehicles. As for sector abilities, as I was saying before, they are affected by the territories. So, for example, if you use perimeter monitor and you capture the cutoff of the opponent, the perimeter monitor will not work anymore on those territories.
Yep.
So it's going to behave in a very dynamic way, and it will only target units that are visible to the enemy.
Okay.
So not everyone. So overall, less oppressive, more like allow players more counterplay, and more readable.
Okay, Miguel,
Okay.
any thoughts on off maps,
Awesome.
or do you think Marco did a good job here?
Sound and information.
Yeah,
Go.
definitely. Something that Marco didn't mention was that we also changed the sound for off-map abilities. Whereas before, either the artillery would have no sound before it actually hit the ground, or where it would use a heavy barrage sound for what it was a light barrage.
Right.
We've now added different levels of sound effects for the different abilities, meaning
Cool.
that a light barrage should have a more clear sounding distinction, comparing to a heavy artillery type thing. So that will help players a lot. Allied to that, and in the same way that we did with flight, we've also made changes to ground deformation. It was probably pretty noticeable in the videos that now artilleries are creating a lot more craters and deformation on the ground, which is one of the big pillars in the Company of Heroes franchise, and we are always looking for ways to bring that back.
Yeah.
So off maps are being given the same treatment as we did with flight in regards to ground
Nice.
deformation.
So let's maybe switch gears and talk.
Just before we go,
yeah, go ahead.
also,
Go ahead.
just a small one as well. Mark was mentioning the flares for the off-map abilities, the threat levels. We've also extended the flares to the flight abilities.
Oh, okay, right. So they should be consistent for all abilities.
Yes.
Okay. So let's maybe shift gears to balance. I know there are a lot of tweaks and adjustments to balance that are coming in Emerald Bear. Unfortunately, we don't have Jason here to talk about those. But are there any sort of specific changes that you think players will be excited to see? I'm the one that I'm really happy to see is I know projectiles won't set off mines anymore, which is really frustrating.
Wow.
Marco, let's maybe start with you. What are some big balance things coming that you're sort of excited for?
That's a big change.
Yes. So quoting Jason here, this is going to be a gentle pass. So
Gentle.
you won't notice like super huge changes. However, at a high level, we looked at the problems we had seen in the meta in the last patch, and we are specifically tackling those problems, which are, for example, the Easy 8 becoming that was really dominant when for the US faction, and for on the other side, Stooks were just overperforming, especially in their Vet 1 abilities.
Yep.
Ability, we are toning those down.
Shout out to
And we
Imperial
also
Dane.
noticed that there was it was too easy for Americans when playing the airborne battle group to call in those airdrop HMGs, and especially it was just too easy to call multiple of those. So we have more than doubled the cooldown for that ability.
Okay, so the airborne para cooldown currently is 30 seconds. So you could effectively have two of them on the front line and set up around 1 minute and 60 seconds. It's very fast. I don't find it particularly strong, but I could see where it can be abusive in some of these like really early game instances where newer players just don't know how to handle it. You know, it could be kind of like cheesy gameplay in the very first minute of the game. So yeah, I like that change.
From 30 seconds to 75. I'm giving out numbers because I know how much players would care about that. But we're also making them slightly cheaper because we know that like changing so heavily the cooldown will have a big impact on that. When it comes down to factions changes, specifically for the US and the UK and the British forces, we have identified that they are struggling a little bit in team games, and we've tried to help them a little bit there, especially like with some minor to medium buffs to units, but especially with like making the other battle groups, especially the Spec Ops and the Airborne Battle Group, a little stronger in their elite troops. So now players will notice that SSF commandos will be more durable on the battlefield, while airborne troops abilities like the grenade will be stronger. And that should help the faction feel a little bit more competitive when like
Awesome.
not using the specific like riflemen into easy eights. As for the easy eights, again, we really toned them down. Well, when we actually did the pass on the 76 millimeter Sherman, where we toned it down, we didn't do it on the easy eight. We're doing it now. So now the easy eights should feel just like a slightly improved version of the Sherman 76 millimeter.
Right. Okay.
When it comes down to the Germans instead, we have slightly toned down the tier 3. So because we have made the Stug Vet 1 ability a little bit worse. And we have made, as the Stug now can use the gun traverse, we have made it a little bit easier for players to flank.
Okay.
On the other side, we have made the tier 2 building a little bit more accessible by not touching units that were already had been quite strong in the past, like the Jaegers. We have been touching more the scout car, the flak gun, and the Wirbelwind by making them a little bit cheaper for players to get.
Okay. Miguel, what about you?
Yeah, RoboWind at 70 fuel. It's so expensive, man. That thing is so expensive, and it costs even more because you have to get all of the fuel requirements before you even get there. So I like that change. I find the change to the airborne infantry really interesting, and the Spec Ops infantry, those elite troops. The airborne battle group in particular doesn't scale extremely well because obviously it hits really hard in the early and mid game and then kind of tapers off. You do have your off-map abilities, like those P-47 rockets are awesome and they're really good in the late game, but it's nice to have some higher impact infantry that you can hopefully scale into the later game and still do well in those large 3v3 and 4v4 matches.
Anything coming balance-wise that they're really excited about?
Mark already mentioned the minor to medium buffs to factions, but for example, the British will receive a fair amount of those. We also have changes to how the British Training Center works, which will now be available from the start. And we also have changes specifically to the DAC, where they should be now less reliant on combined arms. So we've shifted the power from the combined arms passive more onto the unit themselves, the Panzer Grenadiers.
Okay.
And the passive should now be a little bit weaker, but still pretty useful to have. In addition to that, we added more vehicles that can actually give that bonus as well. And the bigger one, or the biggest change to that as well, is how Armored Reserves works. So what we did is we made the upgrade more accessible so that players can use more of the Panzer IV call-in or the Stug call-in. But the Tiger will now have its cost increased, so it's still harder to obtain within the comparatively to the other call-ins. But overall, it's still a net positive gain for the Tiger because we've reduced the upgrade cost. So even with that added cost to the Tiger itself, it will still be easier to obtain than before.
Okay.
So it's
So what is it now? It's like 800 manpower for the Tiger Colin. I want to say 800. I don't think it's 1,000 manpower. So I'd be curious to see what it's going to be in terms of cost.
So we might see
it's
some
more about
tigers.
Shifting.
shifting,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
where the prices are.
Okay. Some questions in the chat that I want to answer. Specifically, we were talking much earlier about some of the changes that are coming to team weapons, which makes them a little bit more effective and a little bit more reliable. Are we going to be addressing their balance to compensate for that? For that added responsiveness.
We've added some very light balance changes, for example, for HMGs. But what we're also trying to see right now is how the pathfinding changes will somewhat play with team weapons. Because now, for example, vehicles should be a lot more smoother to use. So we also want to see how team weapons such as AT guns react to that, because now they should be more flankable because of that as well. So it's something that it's an iterative approach on this, but yes, there are like some light changes to how some team weapons.
So we're nerfing the MG42.
I'll mention, for example, I know players want to go very much into details.
Yeah.
So like a couple of examples, we have slightly actually buffed the Vickers at long range, and for the HMG 42 instead, we have made like its capacity to suppress and ping units slightly worse.
Nice.
So instead of one burst, it's going to take 2 bursts.
Okay. See, this is what I'm talking about with Relic. They're like hyper aware of everything that's going on. I mean, they really are. Like those are 2 great changes in my opinion, right? Instead of just nerfing the MG back to its previous state, they buffed it and it's a little too strong. But instead of like destroying the unit, they're just tweaking the suppression rate, right? Now it's going to take 2 bursts, and now first burst you're okay, get out of dodge, or otherwise you're going to get suppressed in the second burst. I think it's a great change. Vickers needs work for sure. It's very weak, but yeah, I mean that's just a great little change.
So,
and I know that players really want to dig into those details.
Yeah, I've seen like 100 questions in the chat already about that. What about the German MP40s? They're a little strong.
We have also, yes. Okay, so about the German MP40s, we're also nerfing them.
Okay.
So that they won't be as dominant as they are. They still provide a shock value, but not to the degree where they are just that dominant. So when for the MP40s, the long and mid will be worse. So players should be able to play better around those units, when fighting around those units.
Okay. We won't get too much in the weeds about like the actual line changes coming in the patch notes. Like I said, there's gonna be a lot. This is what did Jason call it? A
gentle
pass. A gentle pass for balance. But there are a lot of notes, a lot of changes, especially when you consider the pathfinding changes, the changes to vehicle speeds and rotation. So we're really hoping that Emerald Bear just feels better to play. So let's maybe get back to.
Okay, so it doesn't look like we're going to get the patch notes yet, but here's the vibe that I'm getting from these subtle changes that they're alluding to. It seems like if you take the Axis versus the Allies, it seems like what they're doing is like they're toning down the MP40s, right? But they're toning down the Stugs, for example, but they're tuning up, they're buffing the scout cars, the flak guns, the Ostwind. So you have this idea where like the Axis infantry seems like a little bit less high impact early on, but you have these specialty units and you kind of scale into stronger and stronger unit compositions as the game goes on. Very classic Axis forces in Company of Heroes. Whereas on the Allied side, like they're not toning down the BARs, for example. You're going to have really strong infantry early, right? But they are toning down the Easy 8s as an example, that armor. So like Allied late game, and again, I could be wrong, it seems a little bit weaker, although it's not going to be that much weaker. But once again, stronger in the early game. So I'm trying to think in terms of like balance dynamics. I feel like as the Axis, as the Wehrmacht, I was personally relying on Breakthrough quite a bit. I was relying on those MP40s because I'm an aggressive player. If it's going to be less impact, I'm curious to see how difficult it's going to be to stay toe-to-toe with the Americans, for example, early, right? Of course, with MGs, you'll be fine. But again, those are being tuned down a little bit. So, yeah, the Axis versus Ally dynamic, I think, is becoming more and more prominent, I guess, is a way to put it. But again, it's speculation. We don't have the patch notes. But I'm very curious to see that as we go forward.
What do I want to talk about next? I'm like so all
Did
over
we
the place.
mention weekly challenges?
No,
'Cause-
we're a couple points.
Okay.
First up, I wanted to call out, or I think Marco, you wanted to call out
Yes,
follow camera
yes.
and building selection.
Yes.
So what's going on there?
I know, like if you guys have played Co1 or Co2 and used hotkeys, you are going to to really appreciate that. So now we have added the key bindings and the feature for you to like select and follow or center camera on units when you double click on portraits, on unit portraits.
Oh,
And
cool.
when you double tap on the base on production buildings, the camera will be centered on those.
Okay.
And that's also customizable, right?
And that's also customizable.
Nice.
Yes, you will
I
be
like
able
that.
to change it. So let's say that instead of using the function keys to select the different buildings, you use something else. You will be able to also change the combination of buttons to center camera on those.
Yeah, I know that was a big quality of life thing.
Yes.
that they wanted to get in.
We actually have in the control settings, the last option available allow players to decide whether they want camera to be centered or to follow units when you double click on the unit portraits.
Okay, amazing. Miguel, one balance thing that we missed that I wanted to ask you about was changes coming to repair speeds. So I know that repairabilities for specific units might be changed now when certain things are going on in the game. Can you maybe explain that a little bit?
So a lot of the work with repair has been with standardizing how repairs work and their repair rates.
Standardizing
as
once
well
again.
as making sure that abilities that do improved repairs are nicely adding up to that repair value instead of maybe overwriting what was there before or just generally being difficult to grok where how much repair you're gaining. And also we added repairs to the hazard package removal upgrade. So overall, just it should be a lot more consistent on the repair rates of everything.
And
Okay.
also easier for us to further tune it as we have
Yes.
again, laid a better foundation for us to work on it in the future.
Okay. So now, Miguel, let's get into daily and weekly challenges. I know in the past, the challenge descriptions didn't always align with standard play or what was typical in a normal match. So how have we adjusted challenges in Emerald Bear?
So challenges, the problem that we faced is that they are shaping too much how the players play the game to just complete these challenges. So the work we've
they're
done
not good.
is we've
The
made
challenges
them
are not good.
easier to actually achieve.
More
and
gen-
that
yeah.
should lead to less, again, I'm using the word a lot here, but frustrating moments because someone is doing something just to complete a challenge.
Right. Yeah.
So merit, we know that you gain with those challenges and it'll be easier to gain because the challenges themselves are, also toned down.
Okay, no, that's great to hear. And I think one of the last big features that we wanted to cover here, it's something that I know we've wanted to get into the game for a while, so I'm really excited that we can finally show it off. I am going to show some early images here on the screen of our new player profile. Marco, can you talk a bit
no
about
way,
what's on
man.
offer with this feature?
This is awesome.
We will have a detailed blog post closer to Emerald Bear's release. That's
No
going to
way.
talk more about player profiles, so stay tuned for that.
This is so
But
sick.
let's chat about what's going on here, Marco.
Yes, so player profile is one of our first social features that
I
we have
love
been
this.
able to add into the game. It will provide a pretty comprehensive breakdown of all the matches you have played in every game mode with every faction. Sorry, when I say game
Oh, look
mode,
at that.
I mean
It's right
actually
there on your,
PvP, a game, automatic
games.
game, scope versus AI.
Icon.
And we're also bringing, and that was we can see it here in the post-match stats, we're bringing
That's awesome.
your total elo and the elo gain or lost based on if you won or lost the game.
Yeah.
So here you will notice that we have added new rank new rank icons.
This is
These
sweet.
shiny medals. And we have actually decided to update the previous ones that we were using with these new ones. Players will also notice that we have done a pass on the faction icons, which are
They look a lot better. Yeah.
a much more improved version of them.
Yeah.
So what we want there is to actually lay the foundation for us to allow players to really check how they are performing with the game, check the playing time, the amount of games they play, the win rate, their favorite faction, and check all those medals. In the blog post that will come out, I guess very soon, they will get a better idea of how rank levels work and how you can achieve them. We are actually using the same foundation of the previous 20 rank levels that we had. So we are not changing the underlying system. I'm sure that the blog post will cover like all the details, but we are not introducing also ranked seasons. This is mostly player profile and updating the ranks to better fit with that.
Yeah, it's a good
have
step
more specifics
forward.
about how all of this is going to work.
I think it
s-
looks
did see
really
some
cool.
Questions about are we going to reset ELO? For the time being, no,
Yes,
because
no.
players have worked hard, in matchmaking to gain their ranks. So we're not going to be resetting that right now. Again, we'll have more details about why in our blog post that's going to be coming up. I saw someone talking about, okay, is unranked now ranked? So what we're actually calling that mode now, our standard auto match PvP mode, is going to be quick match,
Yes.
and that is going to be ranked. So Marco, do you want to maybe explain that and why we made that decision?
Yes.
You got it, boys.
So
We got a really
basically
cool
acknowledge that
rank system.
we wanted to we didn't want to do a reset of the leaderboards and really like touch that part too heavily until we could do something that really changed how the underlying system worked. And as we could not do that because we wanted to put player profiles in players' hands as soon as possible, we decided not to reset stats and to actually update the unranked games into quick match. That's how we're going to call it from now on. But that's not only that. We've also added a lot of like social features related to that. So as you can see in this picture, we've added buttons to check other
right here.
players' profiles, as well as add them as friends, block them, or like every other social interaction. For example, in this case, you would be checking the Emerald. This is how the screen would look when checking the Emerald Bear profile. And you can notice on the top right, there is the button that allows you to
Up
add
here.
him as friend, for example.
Yeah.
Cool.
So this allows you to really like go into your friend list or your chat and check
Yeah.
other people profiles
Yeah,
and understand how
love
they
it,
work.
man.
And that's going to be available basically anywhere you see another player's name. So that's going to be like post-match,
Yes.
lobbies, etc. Miguel, any comments on the work that's gone into this feature and
Gamers.
some of the systems behind it?
I mean, I'm a player that really enjoys these types of features. So for me, this is great to see. And also, I love how you can see the elo difference after the game.
Right.
I also just think that it was a very needed feature to just be able to show your achievements.
Yes.
And shout out to Grandma Conti, Joe Conti's Gam at home, working hard on her rank. So yeah, very, very excited for us to roll that out. If you just missed it there's also a link to the web
Yes.
leaderboards right in the player profile. So you can jump right into the leaderboards and check that out. See how you match up against everyone else.
So
Any
awesome,
final
man.
thoughts on
I
that, Marco?
love
I
this.
cut you off there.
I can't believe it's coming, Emerald
no
Bear.
problem.
I mean,
That
we're
also
getting it
means, of course, that as we are
months
linking them
later
to web
after launch.
leaderboards, that we are going to update all the ranked medals on the web leaderboards. So instead of using the 20 rank level icons that players have seen already in Co1 and Co2, we are moving to a more standardized system that will be common to each faction. So players will be able to relate between factions. So we're now featuring different sets of like ranks. Last one, of course, the biggest one being Challenger. And we have decided to split those into leagues and tiers. So, for example, you will have Gold 1, 2, 3, and all of those like Silver, Bronze, Brass, and Challenger. So there are like I think players will overall like the direction we're going.
Yeah,
with this.
and like I said, we're going to release a full blog post that kind of covers in a little bit more detail. Miguel, is this the announcement of you coming back to ranked mode or to quick match rather? Are you coming out of retirement or you got too much work to do?
I think I have too much work to do, but maybe I'll try and get my rank 1 back as Americans.
Okay, all right, you heard here, folks. Catch DevM in a USFQ near you. So last time we were chatting with Will, really in depth about maps. We're showing Monte Carlo on the screen again here. I'm curious for both of you, which of the new ones coming are you excited for players to be, to have some games on? Miguel, are you more looking forward to Benghazi in auto match or to Monte Cavo?
I think Benghazi for me is still the one I'm looking forward to the most. It's just the lighting and the atmosphere of it. I love it. I also think the map itself lends itself to the kind of playstyle I like, which is the urban kind of playstyle and flanking
Right,
and all that. Obviously, Monte Cavo for me still looks great, especially the nighttime. But Benghazi is still my preference.
Yeah. What about you, Marco? I feel like you just love all the maps because they're all Italian. But
Is he
which of
Italian?
these two are you excited for?
I honestly, I was about to say Benghazi as well, but I think that both of them are just extremely good looking. They're really like a step forward in terms of how our presentation can look like. I'm very I really love the south side of Monte Cavo because like I think they are now
Down here.
telling you a very nice story, both Benghazi and Monte Cavo,
Yeah.
with how the maps are structured, and Will did a great job trying like communicating that to our community. So I'm really looking forward to playing them. And also, I think that both the maps offer a very different play style based on where you play. So you have the urban type of map in Benghazi, but the north is a bit more open. Or in this map, Monte Cavo, the two sides are a bit more open, but then you have all the buildings in the center. So I'm pretty sure that players will really enjoy those.
Very
Okay,
cool.
that's great to
Strategically,
hear.
I'm excited for the
I'm-
4v4 map, Monte
I
Carlo.
like both those maps, so I'm going to cheat. And
I really
not give a good
can't wait
answer.
to play that. But both will be sick.
So folks, I think that's going to do it for this live stream today. So for those that missed it, this Emerald Bear update is going to be dropping on July 25th. You'll be able to catch the patch notes that day as well. Like I said, they're very long. We've got a lot of work to get those ready. We're going to be doing our next live stream a couple days after on July 27th. I think that's going to be more of a fun play session. So maybe we'll try and get some players or some of the devs to just jump on and play
get
some
me in
matches on
that.
the new maps.
I'll play on that.
Again, to stay up to date on everything Company of Heroes 3, you're going to want to follow us Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube at Company of
All right, guys. So that's going to wrap up the dev stream. What a great stream. I'm so excited for this update. Again, 10, 11 days from now, the 25th. I really believe this is going to be a big fundamental change to the gameplay more than anything. There's not a ton of balance changes or subtle balance changes as they stated, but I really think that these changes are going to not only make it a more enjoyable experience for players, but it's going to let the game shine in the way that it was meant to shine. Vehicles are going to run optimally and properly. Team weapons are going to be more optimal and ideal to play with. So I think we're going to start to see the game kind of step into its stride, right, in its own unique place in the franchise. And I'm really excited for what's to come, because this is, now that they're getting the ball rolling, I think if they can just pick up like a monthly update from here, adding in new content, I would like to see new content next after something like this, with subtle changes to quality of life and pathing and improvements. We're going to be we're just moving in a great direction. I'm really happy with everything that I saw, from the vehicle maneuvering and pathing to the off-map abilities, the standardization across several different units and timings. Everything is just coming together really well. And I'm really happy that Relic is actively listening. Yes, this update took longer than it should have. It's been a couple months since the last update. It's been a while. I thought that we were going to get the update today after this stream. So I was like, setting my weekend aside so that I could start playing and getting some content out. But we're going to have to wait another 10 days, guys. It's not that long in the grand scheme of things. And I think Company of Heroes is going to start getting really good from here. I think in 6 to 12 months, we're going to be playing a game that has come leaps and bounds from its launch iteration. And it's going to be awesome. So guys, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and smash the like button, subscribe, leave a comment, and let me know what your favorite changes, what you're looking forward to, anything that you see as problematic or concerning or maybe interesting. Go ahead and let me know. I always do my best to read through those, hear your guys' feedback. Another thing, the Discord is now online, the Sarge GG Discord. You could see that on the YouTube banner page on the bottom right hand side. Go ahead and click that. You can join. I'll be posting from time to time, guys, inviting players, subs to play team games here and there. So look out for that. Love to play some games with you guys, especially on the new map Monte Cavo and Benghazi. But guys, it's going to wrap it up for this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.